Imagine a road from Jerusalem to Jericho, winding and dangerous, known for its steep cliffs and hidden dangers. Jesus tells of a man traveling this path who is suddenly attacked by robbers. They strip him of his clothes, beat him severely, and leave him half dead on the roadside. First, a priest comes along. Though he sees the injured man, he chooses to cross to the other side, avoiding any involvement. Soon after, a Levite, respected in society and familiar with religious duties, also passes by. He notices the wounded man, but decides not to help, walking on without offering aid. Then, unexpectedly, a Samaritan appears, a person from a group despised and rejected by the Jews. Despite this, the Samaritan is deeply moved by compassion. He approaches the injured man, carefully cleans and treats his wounds with oil and wine, and bandages them. He then lifts the man onto his own donkey, carrying him to an inn where he can recover safely. The Samaritan stays through the night, personally caring for him. The next day, before leaving, he gives the innkeeper money, asking him to continue looking after the man and promising to repay any additional expenses upon his return. Jesus concludes by asking, "Which of these three do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of robbers?" The answer is clear: the one who showed mercy. This story teaches us that true compassion crosses all boundaries of race, religion, and social status. Genuine kindness is measured not by who we are, but by our willingness to help those in need, regardless of differences.
Imagine a vast crowd gathered on a grassy hillside, eager to hear Jesus teach. People had traveled from far and wide, drawn by his message of hope and love. As the day wore on, hunger began to spread among the crowd. Jesus saw their need and was deeply moved with compassion. His disciples suggested sending the people away to nearby villages to find food, but Jesus challenged them with a surprising request: "You give them something to eat." The disciples were puzzled, unsure how they could feed such a large crowd. All they could find was a young boy's lunch, 5 small loaves of bread and 2 fish. Jesus took this humble offering, gave thanks to God, and began breaking the bread and fish into pieces. He handed them to his disciples to distribute among the people. Miraculously, the food multiplied, and everyone ate until they were satisfied. About 5,000 men, plus women and children. After the meal, 12 baskets of leftovers were collected, more than what they started with. This story reveals Jesus' deep care for both our spiritual and physical needs. It teaches us that even the smallest gift, when offered in faith, can be multiplied to bless many. Follow for more daily inspiration.
In the Gospel of Matthew, after miraculously feeding 5,000 people, Jesus instructed his disciples to get into a boat and go ahead of him to the other side of the lake, while he stayed behind to pray alone. As night fell, a fierce wind began to whip across the water, and the boat was tossed by strong waves. The disciples struggled against the storm, fearful for their lives. Suddenly, they saw a figure walking toward them on the water. Terrified, they cried out, thinking it was a ghost. But Jesus immediately reassured them, saying, "Take courage, it is I, don't be afraid." Peter, wanting to confirm it was truly Jesus, asked to come to him on the water. Jesus invited him, and Peter stepped out of the boat, walking on the water toward Jesus. However, when Peter noticed the strong wind and waves, fear overwhelmed him, and he began to sink. He cried out, "Lord, save me." Jesus reached out his hand at once and caught him, gently asking, "You of little faith, why did you doubt?" Once they climbed back into the boat, the wind ceased and calm returned. This powerful story teaches us that faith in Jesus enables us to overcome fear and uncertainty, even amid life's most turbulent storms. Long ago, God called upon Jonah, a prophet, with a special mission: to go to the city of Nineveh and warn its people to turn away from their wickedness and seek forgiveness. But Jonah was afraid and unwilling to deliver this message. Instead of obeying God's command, he boarded a ship heading in the opposite direction, trying to escape his responsibility. While at sea, a violent storm arose, threatening to sink the ship and endanger everyone aboard. The sailors, terrified, cast lots to find the cause, and the lot fell on Jonah. Realizing he was the cause of the storm, Jonah told them to throw him overboard to calm the sea. Reluctantly, they did so, and immediately the storm ceased. God then sent a great fish to swallow Jonah, where he remained inside its belly for 3 days and nights. During this time, Jonah prayed earnestly, expressing deep regret and asking for God's forgiveness. God heard Jonah's prayer and commanded the fish to release him safely onto dry land. This time, Jonah obeyed God's command and went to Nineveh to deliver the warning. The people of Nineveh listened carefully, repented of their evil ways, and turned to God. Seeing their sincere change, God showed them mercy and spared the city. Jonah's story teaches us about the importance of obedience to God's will, the power of sincere repentance, and the boundless mercy that God extends to those willing to change their hearts.
Long ago, the world was filled with violence and corruption, and people had turned away from goodness. In the midst of this darkness, one man stood out for his righteousness and faith: Noah. God saw Noah's unwavering trust and chose him for a special mission. God warned Noah that a great flood would come to cleanse the earth of its wickedness, and he instructed Noah to build an enormous ark, a massive boat, to save his family and pairs of every kind of animal. Though Noah had never witnessed such a flood and faced mockery from his neighbors, he obeyed God's command without hesitation. He carefully gathered wood and followed God's detailed instructions, building the ark over many years. When the time came, rain poured from the sky and water burst forth from the ground, covering the entire earth. Noah, his family, and the animals entered the ark, and God closed the door behind them, protecting them from the storm. For 40 days and nights, the rain fell relentlessly until even the highest mountains were submerged beneath the waters. Yet, inside the ark, Noah and those with him remained safe and secure. After the floodwaters receded, God made a covenant with Noah, symbolized by a rainbow, promising never to destroy the earth with a flood again. Noah's story teaches us the importance of faith, obedience, and hope, even when others doubt or ridicule us. It reminds us that trusting in God's plan can bring safety and new beginnings.
In the bustling town of Bethany, Jesus was invited to dine at the house of Simon the Pharisee. As the meal began, a woman known throughout the city for her sinful past quietly entered the room. Overcome with deep emotion, she knelt at Jesus' feet, her tears falling like rain. With profound reverence, she washed his feet with her tears, wiped them with her hair, and anointed them with an expensive jar of fragrant oil. The guests were shocked and whispered among themselves. Simon questioned silently how Jesus could allow such a woman to touch him, doubting his judgment. Sensing Simon's thoughts, Jesus told a parable of 2 debtors, one who owed a great debt, the other a small one, both forgiven by their lender. Jesus asked Simon which debtor would love the lender more. Simon replied, "The one who was forgiven more." Jesus affirmed this, explaining that the woman's great love was proof of her forgiven sins and repentance. He then turned to her and said, "Your faith has saved you. Go in peace." This story teaches us about humility, forgiveness, and the transformative power of genuine love and faith.
Imagine a crowd gathered around Jesus, seeking wisdom. Among them, a man asks Jesus to settle a dispute over inheritance. Instead of answering directly, Jesus tells a story to teach a deeper lesson. There once was a rich man whose land produced a bountiful harvest. So abundant was his crop that he ran out of space to store it all. He thought to himself, "What should I do? I have no place to keep my harvest." Then he decided, "I will tear down my barns and build bigger ones. There I will store all my grain and goods. Then I'll say to myself, 'You have plenty stored up for many years. Take it easy, eat, drink, and be merry.' But God said to him, 'You fool, this very night your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself?' Jesus concluded, 'This is how it will be for those who store up things for themselves but are not rich toward God.'" The parable warns us not to let greed blind us to life's true purpose. It reminds us that earthly wealth is temporary and uncertain, while true riches come from generosity and a heart devoted to God. In the end, what we truly own is what we share and how we live in faith.
In the wilderness of En-Gedi, David was fleeing from King Saul, who was relentlessly pursuing him to end his life. One day, Saul unknowingly entered a cave to rest, unaware that David and his men were hiding deeper inside. David's men saw this as a perfect opportunity and urged him to strike Saul down, believing it was a God-given chance for revenge. However, David chose a different path. He quietly approached and carefully cut off a corner of Saul's robe, deliberately sparing his life. As Saul left the cave, David called out to him, holding up the torn piece of robe as proof. He declared, "I have not wronged you, yet you hunt me to take my life." Saul was deeply moved by David's mercy and integrity. He wept and admitted, "You are more righteous than I. You have treated me well, but I have treated you badly." This story teaches a profound lesson about mercy and self-restraint, even when we feel justified in seeking revenge. True strength is found in choosing forgiveness over retaliation. David's example reminds us to respond to others with honor and compassion, regardless of the circumstances.
In a quiet corner of the desert, Moses tended his father-in-law's sheep, far from the grand halls of Egypt where he was raised. One day, something extraordinary caught his eye, a bush engulfed in flames, yet it was not consumed by the fire. Intrigued and cautious, Moses approached the burning bush, and from the flames, the voice of God called out, "Moses, Moses." Moses replied, "Here I am." God instructed him to remove his sandals, for he was standing on holy ground. God then revealed his identity as the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, reminding Moses of the covenant with his ancestors. He told Moses he had seen the suffering of his people in Egypt and had heard their cries. God declared he would deliver them from bondage and bring them to a land flowing with milk and honey. Then, God gave Moses a daunting mission: to confront Pharaoh and lead the Israelites to freedom. Moses, feeling unworthy and hesitant, asked, "Who am I that I should go?" But God reassured him, promising, "I will be with you." The burning bush symbolizes God's presence and the call to trust in his purpose. Even when we feel unqualified or afraid, faith can lead us to incredible journeys and fulfillments beyond our imagination.
Imagine a shepherd with 100 sheep, responsible for their safety and well-being. Each day, he leads them to green pastures and calm waters, ensuring they are protected from danger. One day, he notices that one sheep is missing. Instead of staying with the 99 safe sheep, the shepherd leaves them behind and ventures into the wilderness to find the lost one. He searches tirelessly, climbing hills and crossing valleys, calling out until he finally discovers the sheep, frightened and alone. With great care, he lifts it onto his shoulders and carries it home. Upon returning, he calls his friends and neighbors to celebrate the lost sheep's safe return. This story, told by Jesus, reveals God's deep and unwavering love for each person. No matter how far someone may stray or how lost they feel, God pursues them with compassion and patience. The parable teaches that every individual is precious and worthy of being found. It reminds us that there is immense joy in restoration and that no one is beyond the reach of divine love. The message is clear. God values each of us deeply and rejoices when we are brought back to him.